Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to completely unlock the secrets of one of the absolute highest stakes conversations you will ever have, the unscripted MBA interview. You know the drill. You've got your resume polished to a shine, you've memorized all your stats, and your core stories are down pat. But what actually happens when the person sitting across the table decides to just toss the script right out the window? Well, that is exactly what we are going to master today.
Picture this for a second. You're sitting in the interview chair, your palms are maybe just a little bit sweaty, and the admissions officer leans in and drops this classic, frustratingly vague question on you. Tell me about a challenge you faced. I mean, it's incredibly broad, right? Are we talking professional, personal, academic? The sheer lack of direction in a prompt like this isn't an accident. It's specifically designed to test exactly how you handle ambiguity when the pressure's on.
And honestly, for a lot of candidates, this is the exact moment the train completely derails. It's that classic deer-in-the-headlights panic response. You know, okay, one time. And in that pure panic, you just grab the very first random memory that pops into your head. Something like, I don't know, that time you organized a bake sale in 3rd grade. But our goal today is to pull you far, far away from that panic response. We want you sounding adaptable, highly strategic, and truly conversational, literally no matter what they decide to throw at you. So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First up, we'll tackle the unscripted challenge. Then we'll move into building your toolkit. After that, it's all about surviving curveballs. And finally, we will wrap the whole thing up with the practice playbook.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the unscripted challenge. Specifically, why interviewers choose to go off script in the first place.
Moving right along to Section 2, building your toolkit. Now, what's really fascinating about this next part is that we're going to build out your core conversational toolkit, the 4 pillars of conversational fluency, so we can completely eliminate that interview panic for good. Look, vague follow-up questions, they are not a trap. They are just testing your critical thinking under pressure. So when faced with a super broad question, the strongest candidates absolutely do not freeze. Instead of that weak, fumbling, okay, response, they use polite clarification phrases. Saying something like, would you prefer an example from my professional experience or from university projects is a massive power move. Seriously. It accomplishes 3 things instantly. It completely avoids a misunderstanding, it demonstrates your analytical maturity, and crucially, it buys you precious seconds of thinking time while the interviewer answers.
Now, once you actually have that clarity, you need to deliver depth, and you can expand your answers supernaturally using this exact 4-step progression. Step 1, answer the question directly. Step 2, explain the situation. Step 3, reflect on the lesson you learned. And Step 4, connect it all to your future goals. Using this structured approach basically turns a really basic flat response into a deeply reflective MBA-level discussion. Let's actually see this in action. A dead-end answer is just stating a fact. Something like, I worked in a team project and learned communication skills. I mean, yawn, right? But a strong answer? It uses our framework. It sets the scene by saying, initially, communication was difficult. Then it reflects. I realized effective leadership depends on it. And finally, it connects the dots. That's why I want an MBA. Do you notice how just adding a bit of detail and connecting the ideas directly to your MBA goals changes the entire dynamic of the answer? It's like night and day.
But remember, an interview is a two-way street. You can use very specific active listening signals to transform a rigid, memorized speech into a really smooth conversation. Try using phrases that actively show understanding, like, that's an interesting question, or respond thoughtfully with something like, from my perspective. You can even engage naturally by saying, you know, that actually connects to a previous experience. Doing this signals to the interviewer that you are truly present in the room with them and not just, playing a pre-recorded tape inside your head.
And, hey, let's be totally honest here. Even the absolute most fluent, confident speakers in the world need time to think during an unscripted chat. The trick? Just swap out your nervous sounds for professional fillers. So instead of peppering every other sentence with, you want to use a polished executive tone. Try phrases like, let me think about that for a moment. Or what comes to mind first is, these phrases buy you the exact same amount of time as an but they keep you sounding incredibly polished and totally in control.
Okay, let's move right into Section 3, surviving curveballs, how to handle follow-ups and interruptions when the pressure is really on.
So let's simulate a scenario. Let's say you've just given a totally stellar answer about why you want an MBA to develop your leadership skills. You're feeling good. And then the interviewer leans in, looks you right in the eye, and throws this massive curveball. Why can't you develop those leadership skills through work experience alone? That feels super confrontational, right? Well, it's meant to be. They are testing your conviction.
And here is the absolutely perfect way to handle it. That's an important point. Work experience is essential, but an MBA offers structured exposure to diverse industries and collaborative problem solving. Notice how brilliant this is. The candidate stays perfectly calm, they gracefully acknowledge the challenge, and then they expand logically on their original premise without getting defensive for even a split second.
Now, sometimes the pressure tactic is an actual, literal interruption mid-sentence. MBA interviewers will definitely do this intentionally just to see what you do. If this happens to you, here are the absolute golden rules. Number 1, do not panic. Number 2, do not apologize excessively. And number 3, do not lose your structure. Just take a breath and use a professional response like, certainly, or let me address that directly. Your absolute best weapon here is just pure flexibility. Just roll with the new flow. Let's dive into a continuous mock interview sequence so we can really see this unscripted flow in action. We're going to start with literally one of the most stressful, universally dreaded prompts you could possibly get. Tell me about a time you failed.
Here is how an ideal candidate responds to that. The biggest issue was communication. I assumed everyone understood the responsibilities, but I hadn't confirmed deadlines clearly. This is just fantastic. The candidate gives a highly structured, direct answer about what actually went wrong. They take total ownership, and they completely avoid the trap of making excuses or throwing their team under the bus. So the interviewer, sensing the candidate's genuine honesty, decides to test their growth. They pivot with a rapid-fire follow-up. How would your colleagues describe your leadership style now? This is such a brilliant test to see if the candidate can naturally connect a past failure directly to their current level of self-awareness. And the candidate just knocks it completely out of the park. I think they would describe me as collaborative and structured. I try to create clarity while also encouraging open discussion. This kind of natural, flowing ping-pong conversation where a mistake is openly acknowledged and the subsequent growth is clearly and confidently articulated, this is exactly what admissions committees are dreaming of. It just shows such deep, professional maturity.
All right, bringing it home with Section 4, the practice playbook. It's time to shift from theory to doing the homework. Let's look at how to avoid mistakes and start shadowing.
First off, let's just quickly run through this checklist of common pitfalls so you know exactly what to avoid during your practice sessions. If you find your answers are overly short, force yourself to explain the why. If you're sounding a bit robotic and memorized, you've got to loosen up and aim for a more conversational, reflective tone. And if you catch yourself speaking way too long and just rambling, practice using that 4-step structure we covered earlier to force some natural, concise elaboration.
Okay, now here is your specific homework assignment. It is called the shadowing technique, and trust me, it is a total game changer. Step 1, listen to a really good model MBA interview answer. Step 2, repeat immediately after the speaker. Step 3, aggressively copy their tone and their pacing. Step 4, record yourself. And finally, Step 5, compare your version with the original. Shadowing builds up your rhythm, your pronunciation, and it creates this deep conversational confidence because you're physically training your vocal cords to speak in an executive cadence.
That's a great question. I would say the most important leadership lesson I've learned is the importance of communication. Early in my career, I highly encourage you to practice shadowing with little paragraphs exactly like this. Record it, listen back, and tweak it until your delivery feels completely unforced, incredibly natural, and just deeply authentic.
I really want to leave you with this final golden rule today. The strongest candidates sound prepared, but never scripted. If your interviewer suddenly tossed out their notepad right now, who would they actually meet? Master these unscripted moments, and I promise you, you will master the interview. But what happens when an interviewer decides to throw a question at you that's so hostile, it actually borders on unethical? Well, we're going to tackle exactly how to handle toxic interview tactics in our next explainer. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep practicing those unscripted moments, and I will see you next time.